Are we currently being oversaturated with music? I have been asking myself a lot lately, that question. I've been asking myself that question a lot lately. I think there are obviously some positives and negatives to having a lot of music coming out in a short amount of time. I'll start with the positives because they're pretty obvious. For one, if you're a music fan, then there's music. There's loads of music out there. Of course, it's going to be a good thing. I mean, you can just find music so easily. It's never been easier, really. I mean, the internet age has made it so easy to just find completely out of the blue bands, completely obscure bands. If you're not into like pop music, you don't need to rely on the radio anymore. You can go to YouTube. You know, if you want pop music, you can go to streaming services as well and get all the pop music that you want at any time. You don't have to just turn on MTV, or you don't have to go on the pop music channels or anything like that. It's so easy now to get music at any point. So obviously I'm going to say that that is a positive thing because I am a massive music fan, so I want to be able to get as much music as I want and can in whatever. So of course that's a great thing. And with that as well, there's so much to be hyped over. I mean, just in one week, we get albums by so many different styles of music and different artists, and yet, you can get excited for those albums, and they're all kind of coming at once, so it makes it a bit more exciting to get to Friday, I suppose. So of course there are obvious positives to having loads of music at any time. There's so much to get excited for. Of course, it's a great thing, and the fact that it's so easily accessible, that's perfect. But now we've got to go on to the negatives, and I don't want the negatives to outweigh the positives, but I feel like lately it has been doing that. For one, this past week we've had like 15 albums. Like I've lost count of how many albums that I've wanted to check out and how many albums that I've seen get hyped up in just the space of 7 days. I've never known anything like this. The week before last was pretty crazy too. I mean, there was Brand New, Grizzly Bear, and a few other albums that all came out in one week. Um, and I remember, like, about a month or 2 months ago, it was one of the most insane weeks ever. I think I counted, and it was like 17 or 18 albums in one day that I wanted to check out. So this past week hasn't been that bad in comparison to some weeks this year. But still, for one, how are we going to make sure that we give every single one of these albums a fair share of listens so we can form a proper opinion on them? I mean, I've already said in a previous video that really you should give an album at least 3 listens, but if there are like 15 albums in one week, realistically, does anyone have time to give all the albums that they want to listen to 3 listens? Because I don't know if they do. This is probably why singles do better than albums these days. This is why more singles are hyped up and people make playlists and shuffle through their artists rather than playing albums because they probably can't keep up with all the albums that come out. And not only that, but most people aren't that bothered about listening to an album. But if you are bothered, then how do you cope when there's that many albums in one week? But I think for me, what's getting me down the most is that there are like at least 10 albums a week now that I'm listening to and I want to hear, and like I'm only really falling in love with one. Like 1 out of 10 albums isn't really that strong of a like figure, is it? I mean, one album when there are like 10 others in one week, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. That is just me, though. I mean, I'm only one person, but then when you look at like critics and other critics out there that review all these albums as well, they're not really positively saying a great deal about all these albums. I mean, usually some are just fine, they're okay, they're decent, but how are you going to go back to them? Probably not. And that's definitely the most criminal thing because if you're never going to go back to them, then you're never really going to make sure that you've given it the fair share of listens because in like a year or two, that album might actually sound very different in context with what it sounded like when it first came out. But because there are all these albums in such a short amount of time, you're going to forget half of them at least. I mean, sure, people's opinions don't change that drastically on music, usually, but I bet there are plenty of albums that fall under the radar that you probably would have regarded really highly if you'd have actually given them a listen and had the time to listen to them when they initially came out. Of course, some weeks, some albums really take the hype train. I mean, this week it's obviously going to be LCD Sound System, but how many albums actually are coming out that you're going to miss because all you've been really listening to or talking about is LCD Sound System? You're probably missing out on so many albums, but yet do you have time to listen to them all? That's the issue. Let me know what you think of this. Am I hitting the nail on the head here, or am I being a bit too negative? If you feel the same as I do, then let me know as well. Let me know your thoughts. I really want to know if it's just me that's thinking this as well, but I think there are others out there too. But on the one hand, it's great. Like Brockhampton have like 10 albums this year. King Gizzard have like 15 albums this year. Um, but it's like I'm not loving like more than 80% of it. So it's like it's just a bit frustrating. As a music lover, you want to love everything that you hear, and it's not turning out that way. It's not panning out the way that you want it to, and I'm just the way I want it to anyway. So I'm just kind of curious. It's bumming me out a bit. Let me know what you think of this. Goodbye.